Hello, good evening, I'm Andy.
Hi, it's Dave.
Hi, it's Kirk.
Okay, so we're here, episode number 3 of the A.D.K. Rock and Metal Show, and today we've got our album reviews. So today, Kirk, what are we reviewing this week on the albums?
So I think for this week we're doing the Slipknot record, the German thrash band Tankard, and Autopsy, death metal legends.
Okay, where do you want to start?
Let's start with the big name then, Slipknot. Do you want me to kick off with this one?
Yeah, you kick off on it.
Yeah, I mean, so I lived through the hysteria of Slipknot when they first emerged onto the scene in 1999. I was 16 at the time, never really got into them because I keep saying I don't really like new metal, but I realized that before I listened to this album, I was too much of a snob and I used to dismiss Slipknot, but this album is surprisingly enjoyable. And I can understand why it's 57 minutes long. When you're one of the biggest bands in the world, the fans are not going to accept anything less than 45 minutes, really, are they? Really, really diverse album as well. Track number 1 reminded me of like a cross between Pink Floyd and the Bee Gees. It's got a really impressive falsetto in there. The heavier moments, they've definitely, to me, they used to have a bit of a grindcore death metal element, didn't they? That song, People Equal Shit. I remember hearing that thinking, wow, this is extreme. So it's more like a technical thrash metal sound to it. The only things that let it down, they definitely don't need the decks in there. That's just a hangover from the new metal era. That just sounds ridiculous. Also, Corey Taylor, some of his clean vocals, is he deliberately doing like a multi-harmony, soft rock, Boston type foreigner harmony? Sometimes it works, other times it just does not suit the aggression of the song, and occasionally he does have that annoying Jonathan Davis Korn type stream of consciousness rap scream hybrid, which just does not work when you're using really heavy chunky riffs. But surprisingly good, and I can now say I'm no longer a snob. I'm never going to be a huge Slipknot fan, but this was listenable, it was heavy, breathtaking at times in terms of them not giving a fuck and just doing what they want and taking in so many genres. And there's a definite Faith No More influence in there. One last thing before I hand over though, I now realize why I don't like that 2018 Machine Head album, because it just tries to be Slipknot, and when I hear it from Slipknot, it doesn't offend me. It's actually quite good. I just don't want one of my favorite bands to sound like that, i.e. Machine Head 2018. So yeah, definitely surprised by this one.
Okay. Andy, what's your thoughts on it? I'm intrigued from your point of view.
Yeah, I mean, I'm no Slipknot fan either. I don't think I own an album. You know, I know from some of the videos that came out in back in the day. So I'm no fan at all. But I went into this with an open mind. As Kirk said, the opening track's a bold move, because if you don't know Slipknot, you think, what the hell's this? You know, I've noted down it reminding me of Seal, the mottled skin dreadlock singer from the night. You know, it's a very, very strange opening song. I mean, there's a couple of classic Slipknot style songs throughout the album. There's some very angry tracks as well. There's a slow, heavy track. There's acidic, is sort of light relief compared to the rest of it. As you said, lots of different styles in there. I was, perhaps you can help me out with this. Has the DJ scratching and the guy hitting the beer barrel with a baseball bat, is that long gone? So I didn't hear much of that throughout the album. I know that's what they were
still there.
All back in the day.
They still do it. They slipped a little bit of that in, but it's not as prevalent anymore in that sort of style. But
yeah, I mean, it's been on my downloads. So, I'll go back and listen to it again. Well, I couldn't say that about any previous Slipknot album. I've never been sort of drawn to listen to them, but as we've been as we've asked for a review this one, yeah, I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I would say I did exactly probably the same. Everyone thought about the first track, because I put it on Spotify, I pressed play, put the phone in my pocket, carried on working, and then 30 seconds later, I'm like, hang on, have I jumped to a different album or something? Hang on, this is Slipknot, really? That threw me completely, the first track. I listened to the album all the way through while I was working, and there was obviously, as you said, there's the classic elements of Slipknot in there. There is definitely elements of CMFT, which is Corey Taylor's band. the non-Stone Sour band. That's his other band, Corey Motherfucking Taylor, as it's called. Then there was elements of Stone Sour in there. When it did go into the Slipknot elements, where they kind of older sounded Slipknot, it felt very... I guess I'd like to say it felt very... I'm trying to find the right word for it today. Suddenly the word slipped from my head. They obviously meant to make it sound that way. It didn't feel very organic. They were like, we need to make a song that sounds like a Slipknot song. So they put in certain elements, like the DJ element and stuff like that. They put them in there just to say, well, now we've got something that sounds like a Slipknot album in on this song. Because when you're listening to song after song after song, they didn't flow. The album didn't feel like it naturally flowed to each other. It just felt like a good collection of songs. I mean, saying that, I wasn't a big fan of the last Slipknot album. I think this was a good balance of tracks. But I do think they don't know what their identity is anymore. It felt like there was too much of, we need to do something that is Slipknot, but they're also, this song sounds like Stone Sour, and this song sounds like CMFT, and then we need to try and do a balance of all of it. And I'm wondering how much of that is, with the early albums with Joey and Paul Gray, they were key figureheads in the writing process. Now, obviously, they've been gone for a while, but I've noticed with the albums, they've slowly been getting watered down in elements and that they're losing their identity in some senses. I don't feel that what we're getting now is what you would have got from the first maybe 3 albums of Slipknot. When you're talking about the first 3 albums, you've got this clear message, this clear direction they wanted to go, and then as members lost, as Paul lost or left, and then Joey obviously left the band, you kind of just got this watered down version of it, in my opinion.
Do you not think, because I've not really listened to the back catalogue since that IO album 2001, which was actually quite good, wasn't it? It's clear that because of their fan base, they could just put out a grindcore album and it would actually help them, wouldn't it, really? Because all the gatekeepers and tastemakers who've dismissed Slipknot, myself included in the past, would be like, oh, they're a decent band. I'm inclined to disagree with you. I thought it sounded quite coherent, surprisingly, but that's because I know that they have a big Mr. Bungle and Faith No More influence to the music. But you can also hear Portishead in there. I know that Corey Taylor, Portishead, are one of his favourite bands, and there's a few tracks in there where you can hear it. Some of the choruses are excellent. I guess the one thing that I used to dismiss them for is there's 2 kinds of metalcore. There's the mainstream plastic metalcore, where all those bands all look good and are influenced by Slipknot, so that gives me a reason to dislike Slipknot. And then there's the real muscular metallic hardcore, those bands that are influenced by Integrity and Converge. So I kind of blame Slipknot for that, but they've had a good influence on other bands like that deathcore band Slaughter to Prevail. I can hear their sound in that band's audio output. But I think probably, Andy, you might agree, because I didn't really know what to expect, because I've deliberately avoided them over the last 2 decades. That's what probably surprised me the most. I actually thought the songwriting standard was quite high, and if probably a bit too ambitious, putting those 1970s soft rock mid-range vocal harmonies in choruses where you've got really aggressive drop A guitars just threw me. I was like, I don't know if this goes or not, but it's asking the right questions.
Yeah, I think they went, at the moment, direction-wise, if you went old school Slipknot sound, Stone Sour sound, and on this album, they've gone more towards the Stone Sour sound. They've got elements of Slipknot in there, but it sounds just like much heavier Stone Sour to me. And that's where I think the Corey Taylor influence in the writing's coming through. And especially the fact that Jim Root, obviously guitarist with Slipknot, was in Stone Sour for a while. There's the element of how much of that is influenced in the style of their writing. So I don't know. I think for me, if we're talking about thumbs up or thumbs down, it's a thumbs up album for me. I think it is a good album. It just wasn't what I was expecting from Slipknot. If someone had told me that this was the new Stone Sour album, I would have believed that.
Yeah, I'll give it a thumbs up as well. What about you, Andy?
Yeah, thumbs up from me as well.
Yeah.
Awesome.
What
So
about
thumbs
it?
up for Slipknot. What was the second song or album we had to talk about?
Going to do Autopsy, Morbidity, Triumphant, Death Metal Legends.
Autopsy. Okay. You can kick that one off again, Kirk.
I'll push it over to you, Andy, because you were
All
probably listening to them in 1989, I imagine.
I certainly was, yeah. Yeah.
So what do
Very
you think of it?
big fan of the band. For honest, wasn't blown away. It's a long way from the classics. Seven Survival and Then the Funeral. But that, as you say, that was late 80s, early 90s. We've moved on, but there's still classic Autopsy, just not quite as memorable and as in your face as some tracks from that time. I mean, there's certainly ones that sort of live up to that, but it's not consistent throughout the whole album. Highlights for me are the Final Frost, which may well be a follow-up, intentionally or unintentionally, to In the Grip of Winter. Rather than one man trek through a bleak, snowbound wilderness, it's the whole planet falling into that realm of cold. But yeah, that's a really good track. Usual sort of format for Autopsy. There's the real slow, deep vocals from Chris Reifer on some tracks, higher on the faster tracks. But it's what you'd expect from an Autopsy album, just not quite in your face and as good as years gone by, to be honest. I mean, the artwork's amazing. You've got to be some sort of sick motherfucker to come up with that concept. But yeah, again, one I'd buy on CD. It's on the playlist still. Another sort of feature that is on this album that you do always find on an Autopsy album is the sort of single note harmonised riff. That's sort of that's their sort of trademark as well. But yeah, if you like Autopsy, go and get it. It's Autopsy.
Yeah, I think my sentiments, I share some of those sentiments. So you're right, it's a typical Autopsy album, isn't it? And this is a band that really did pioneer the early mix of doom metal with punk. Obviously, Chris Reifer played drums, didn't he, on the first ever death metal album, Scream Bloody Gore, in 1987, with Chuck Schuldiner for Death. And I've always been a fan of their work, like you, probably not as much as you. I know the classics, the first two albums, and they always appear, don't they, in the best death metal albums of all time, or the best albums of the 90s. I really liked the bass tone on this, really sludgy. Definitely, there's some tracks on there where it makes you realise that modern hardcore bands, how many of them now sound like Obituary and Autopsy? Mm-hmm. Who'd have thought that hardcore, which obviously started in punk, you've got a whole scene where a lot of them just sound like death metal bands from 1989. Yeah. So you can see the Autopsy's influence certainly on that. I think it comes in at 42 minutes, the album, which probably overstays its welcome. I think a death metal album like that, you only need 35 minutes. But yeah, I was. It's certainly something that will stay in my playlist. Is that a bad thing if death metal's actually easy to listen to? Because I assume that was not the original intention. But because I'm so used to music like this, like Andy, I enjoyed it. I wasn't underwhelmed by it, Andy. I think you were underwhelmed by it, judging from what you're saying. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've listened to it quite a few times, and it still hasn't reached that sort of level where you can recall the song title that goes with that particular melody or that hook or that riff. It's unlike the classics we've already mentioned. I think that's been the theme. My feeling certainly for the ones over the recent years as well. Because they had the hiatus, didn't they? And then they came back. All the other bands that Chris Reifert's been involved in, you think, well, this could be an Autopsy album. Ravenous. Was Static Abyss. Is that
That's
the latest?
That debut album from this year.
Yeah,
I think that's better than the Autopsy album.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that, but that could have been an Autopsy album. He's not sort of diverting too far from what knows best.
Yeah. Dave, go on, give us the brutal synopsis. Give us your verdict. I'm assuming that.
Okay. Well, I knew what I was expecting with it. So, I mean, with a title, Morbidity Triumphant, you knew it was going to be a heavy stuff. I do remember the name Autopsy when I was growing up, but I never listened to them. So when it kicked in, listened to the whole album. It's old school death metal. It sounds like it was recorded in the 80s to me. The production hasn't moved forward. It sounds like a good album that was recorded in the 80s. The problem I've got is there was lots of good albums recorded in the 80s. So do I want a good album in the 2020s that sounds like it was 40 years ago? I've got enough of those. I want something different. And that's why I was kind of like, I could take it or leave it. It wasn't bad in any shape or form. There was not an element of it that made me kind of go, oh, that's interesting. There was no kind of grab my attention. I just listened to it, I worked, and I was just like, next song. I was like, right, death metal. Which maybe I'm getting a bit ear blind to death metal nowadays. I don't know. Maybe I'm just kind of getting so dismissive of death metal because we seem to be listening to a lot of it. But it's I'm now looking for something that I don't mind death metal at all. I don't mind aggression, but I also still want that groove element. I want something about it to almost grab me by the old coattails and make me pay attention to it. And I didn't think that was it for me. It weren't a bad album, and I'm sure there are people that are going to love it because it's got that old school sound. But then why not just go back and listen to some 80s death metal?
Yeah,
go back and listen to early Death, go back and listen to early Obituary and all that sort of stuff, and even go back and listen to the Autopsy's early albums, and you'll probably find a better album.
Yeah, I think they're in a good position at the moment, though, Autopsy. Dave, Andy, you talked about the hiatus that they took, and they came back in 2009 and did their 2011 album, and then they've done 4, haven't they, since, including this one. But there's definitely a reaction going on in death metal where you've got bands who are trying to be a bit more primitive again. You just said there about the production. That's deliberate. They want it to sound like it was recorded at Morris Sound in 1991. Because if you think about it, there's a lot of avant-garde death metal where they're going in a jazz fusion direction and really using really obtuse guitar chords, and some of that can be great and some of it can just be so dull. So I think there's definitely a hunger amongst old school death metalers for modern bands to go back to that, like Gatecreeper. They're a band that are doing that with the hardcore element as well, and crossover thrash is part of it. So I think that the times are favourable to Autopsy at the moment, and in 5 years' time, I imagine death metal will still be. It's never going to be mainstream, but it'll still have prestige amongst those that listen to heavier music. But it's always in danger of becoming monotonous, isn't it? This genre.
Yeah. So what are we doing? Thumbs up or thumbs down then?
Thumbs up for me.
Definitely, yeah. Thumbs up for me.
I can't give it a thumbs down because it's not a bad album, but it's not one I'm going to listen to again.
Give it a thumbs down then. If there's no repeat listening value, give it a thumbs down.
It's got to be a thumb down personally. Yeah. There wasn't.
You've got to be brutal.
But I also have to be harsh because it's a hard one for me to give it a thumbs down in the sense that I don't listen to death metal. Yeah. So to get a death metal for me to actually put on a repeat listen is going to be bloody amazing if we ever find one. But you never know. What's our third album choice then?
So we're going to go for some Teutonic thrash. So German is probably most overlooked member of the German Big Four, Tankard. Dogs.
Yeah, so, okay.
So what, do you want me to kick this one off? So,
you can still kick it off if you like, yeah.
Yeah, Tankard, I reviewed this for Screen Blast Repeat. Obviously, they've got a great sense of humour. The lyrics are quite poignant, actually. They don't just talk about drinking beer, which is a great subject, something that I certainly enjoy doing. And they have some amusing song titles. From a musical point of view, out of the Big Four, Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer, and Anthrax, they've certainly got an Anthrax element to their music, but they've been going since 1983, so they've got their own sound. I was a bit surprised by the guitars. A lot of palm muting, but very rarely does the guitarist allow the bite of the chords in between that alt picking technique to really hiss at you, which when you listen to Slayer or even Metallica, you'll have the palm muting and then those chords that they let ring out, in like a sharp resonance. He wasn't really doing that. Good bass tone again, really heavy. Almost feels like tectonic plates colliding, ready to cause an earthquake. Lyrics and vocals very clear in the mix, still plenty of aggression. So yeah, that song "I Want Lockdown Forever" is hilarious, but still a really heavy song. There's also one on there about how corporations profit from, let's be honest, the environmental disasters that faces, and it's talking about, hey, let's buy some stocks in water, and really saying, we're just using natural resources as commodities and people are short selling it. I don't think that is the case, but I thought that it was more skeptical than cynical, and that's the type of intellectual approach I think you've got to take if you're going to have a political message to your music. And then of course they have songs about hangovers and getting wasted, like obviously the band they've influenced the most, Municipal Waste. So quite enjoyable for me. I knew what to expect, probably what you thought, Andy, about Autopsy. This is what I took away from the Tankard album.
Cool. I listened to it yesterday, I think it was. Classic. There was some classic thrash elements in it. It's quite an interesting mix in the album, from classic thrash to some kind of, there's a little bit of hard rock elements kind of creeping in as well, so it's not just all thrash all the way through. Vocally, it actually reminded me of a local band, Kane.
Okay.
So when I was listening, because I'd been listening to the local band Kane's new album the other day, and when this came on, I actually thought it was the Kane album, because vocally he was singing exactly like how Rage sings on the new album, which is slightly, because Rage has actually changed his vocal style just for this new album. He's changed it to a bit more of a bite one rather than trying to sound like Bruce Dickinson on every album. And that was what they were doing on some of the things, this kind of almost like da 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 da. They were kind of biting the words rather than trying to do a flowing melody, which was quite cool. I quite liked that. Again, wasn't anything that kind of made me go, this is a great album that I want to listen to loads and loads of times, but wasn't an offensive album, wasn't one of those ones that I didn't want to skip a track at any point. I didn't kind of go, oh, I can't handle this, let's go to the next one, or I'm getting bored. I never got bored at any point. So yeah, it wasn't a bad album for me.
What do you think about, I was surprised that it was 55 minutes in length, and I do think that they did recycle the choruses too many times on at least 3 tracks on that album, where they would, and I think they did even commit cliche of change, going up an octave at one point.
I do feel that the length of the album was too long, and some of the songs were a little bit too long. I think there was probably, if anything, there was a couple of tracks, I can't remember off the top of my head, but at least one track didn't feel right in the album. It felt slightly out of place with everything else on it.
Metal Cash Machine, I think, is the song.
Something like that. There was one about football, or there was something on the album. I just remember looking up the picture of it, thinking they just jumped to a completely different song, or it was a new album or something. And I'm watching it going, why is this on the album? This makes absolutely no sense next to the other tracks that are on here in some cases. So I don't know what that was about, but the bulk of the album weren't bad. I actually didn't mind it at all.
Go on, Andy. What were your thoughts?
I really liked it. This will come maybe as a surprise to you, Kirk, or maybe not, but I've never listened to Tankard in my life before reviewing this album. I grew up with Destruction, Creator and Sodom from Germany. I actually love their early stuff, still do, play it all the time. But honestly, I think the sort of comic gimmick, not serious element of this band sort of didn't draw me to them, so I've never listened to them. But so I went into this sort of a little skeptical. First listen, didn't like it, if I'm entirely honest with you, but I really, really do like this album. I thought, from what I knew of Tankard, it'd be like 10 songs all about beer. They've got some, obviously. There's the lockdown one, which did have a comedic element, but that's obviously about the pandemic. Diary of a nihilist, if that's the right word. That was serious. I mean, there's a few serious tracks on there, but I thought it was really, really good. catchy and memorable. I don't think they're the greatest musicians in the world. The drummer needed more feels. It was just like same beat through.
Gag beats all the way through, isn't it?
Through the whole length of the song. I mean, you said about Metal Capuchin. I don't know if that is the one that sounds a bit odd. You know if that was the track, but I thought that was a good track.
Right.
I think I've looked at the lyrics before. I can pick up the sort about the people buying loads of merch and making money from merch and metal bands being a cash machine and rolling in money from selling their stuff. I can't say that's probably particularly true for every band, but yeah, I thought it was really, really good. I think the sort of non-alcohol related songs were stronger for me.
Sorry, that's just hilarious, the fact that we can even say the non-alcohol related songs.
Yeah.
Which other band could you describe like that, saying, I prefer the non-alcohol related songs?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably an even split, but they're the serious tracks are the stronger ones for me. I mean, is something about it being an Instagrammer.
Exfluencer, yeah, that's song is great, track number 2.
But yeah. on the Day I Die, the close of that's sort of a bit somber as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was really good to the extent that I've now today downloaded a Tankard playlist and go for their back catalogue. But from what I've heard of that, none of their previous stuff touches this. I know they've had out 18 albums or something, but this was my favourite of the 3 this week.
Excellent. So I'm guessing that's a thumbs up from Andy then.
Absolutely, yeah. It surprised me. I thought out of the 3, not a big Slipknot fan, never heard Tankard, it's going to be Autopsy all day. But I really, I mean, I've played it after I've done my review notes. I enjoyed it that much.
Well, it's a thumbs up from me as well. I think it's an album I will probably go back and listen to and give it a bit more time. Having only gone through it once, but there's nothing about it that makes me not want to go and do that. So I'm going to give it a thumbs up from me.
Yeah, thumbs up from me. So out of the 3, I think we probably enjoyed that more than Slipknot and Autopsy.
Yeah.
The
surprise.
Yeah.
Excellent. Right. Well, let's go over and check out a music video from one of the local bands. Okay, so we're back and it's time to ask the question of the week for the table. So as always, you guys don't know what the question is. I do. Today's discussion topic. And it's a discussion topic to talk about a lineup bill. So as of this morning, the most up-to-date lineup has been announced for Bloodstock 2023. And I thought it'd be interesting for us to discuss the lineup. There's a couple of odd ads. There's one very particular odd band that's been put on the bill. So when we look to bands that have been on, so we've obviously got the new Biohazard, or the old Biohazard, the original lineup Biohazard on there, which I think is going to be amazing because they have not been together for they went on hiatus in 2016. We've got Anthrax, In Flames, Sepultura, Megadeth. So this is quite a commercial build, which is quite unusual because it's Bloodstock. So Bloodstock's kind of more of an alternative to the download, whereas that lineup wouldn't seem out of place on a download build, in my opinion.
Got some big names in there, yeah. As you'd expect, because how else are you going to get people to attend?
So you need the big names, but it is quite it's an interesting one. But there's one name on the bill that kind of made me go, why are they on a Bloodstock bill? And that is the band Ugly Kid Joe.
All right.
Why are they on main stage? And I'm a big fan of Ugly Kid Joe.
And the cats in the cradle and the silver.
Yeah, we've got I Hate Everything About You band on the bill with Sepultura and Anthrax and Megadeth. And if you were to say that was download, you'd go, okay, that would make sense. But Ugly Kid Joe at Bloodstock. And we know that Bloodstock is very much about the heavy, the more extreme bands.
Yeah.
But I'm intrigued about what your guys' thoughts are, because it made me kind of just go, where did that come from? How did they get on the bill? And the other band that I thought I looked at when I first saw it was Nonpoint.
Who? Nonpoint.
So Nonpoint are very much a crossover from the old and new metal days, hardcore days. So they did I think they did a cover of the Phil Collins song "I Can Feel You Coming in the Air Tonight."
Right.
I did a rap metal or new metal version of that, and I'm like, hang on, you've got a new metalish band also on there. This feels a bit odd,
isn't it?
Well, I actually have to say I've never been Bloodstock, but I'm intrigued. I'm really interested from Andy's point of view what he thinks about the bill so far for 2023.
Like I said, I've never been either, but the band you just listed there takes us back to our discussion on our first sort of topic of discussion episode, where we were saying, or you pointed out that are some of these festivals too big band heavy?
Yeah.
And this is an example of that. I mean, if Testament had been there, that'd have ticked the box.
No, we're not allowed to mention Testament in this.
Although they have said Decapitated is in there as well, so they've just had to throw in one band like that's suitable for that genre of that festival and go, we'll throw that one in there as well. But I do feel they're just trying to nick download now. It feels like Bloodstock are going, we're just going to be another download.
Yeah, those bands you listed were sort of, they could have been in the sort of imaginary lineup we were discussing as to our festivals too big band heavy. I did see this earlier in the week, the names that have been released, and I did sort of scratch my head at Ugly Kid Joe. Didn't know it was the original Biohazard lineup. That is fantastic, because there was a few albums that I've got where I think they lost Evan, and it wasn't what you call Biohazard. Again, not the stuff wasn't as good as the classic Biohazard stuff. But yeah, I agree with I think you said, Dave. That could, you look at that and think, oh, there's the initial announcement for download rather than Bloodstock. But
yeah, and it's interesting if you look at a lot of the comments that I was reading a lot of people's comments on Facebook pages where it was announced going, where's the heavy black? When are we going to get black metal? When are we going to get symphonic metal? They've been asked for year after year, and they keep saying, well, we're still going to go, but we keep asking for symphonic metal. We keep asking for orchestral style metal. We're not getting the other extreme elements or the black metals. We just seem to get the doom, black metal, death metal bands are getting put on the very small stages, and we're not getting any of the bigger those sort of bigger bands getting brought across onto main stage. Like wouldn't hurt then to put something like a Paradise Lost on main stage, for instance. It would be great to sort of highlight that element.
Do you know? So what you're saying, you two, is that it's now become a bit like download. So you wouldn't be surprised if Alter Bridge were on this bill, who are clearly a good rock band.
By 2024, probably.
Yeah. When we say big bands, can I just qualify that? We mean, damn, it's offensive to say legacy. Bands that have been around for 3 decades, legends, Sepultura, Anthrax, Megadeth. Same names though, isn't it? So there's a lot of thrash metal on this build, which is never a bad thing. It's my favorite genre of metal. Biohazard, I'm not as excited as everyone else by that, probably because I still find some of their early stuff, like Tales from the Hard Side, where they're talking about the Bronx and Brooklyn, as ridiculous. Musically, I can listen to it, but I never took them seriously. So don't quite get the euphoria and the excitement about that. They're a good band. They're influential. Never really done anything for me. Ugly Kid Joe, yeah, that is. Who's listening to that band? Do I sound like a snob there? I just can't get it. Oh, okay, fair enough.
It's just me in the corner.
The singer ended up in Life of Agony for a while in the 90s.
He did, yes.
Not very long ago, I think.
No, exactly. I think it was a major label release though that he was on, but yeah, it didn't really do anything, did it? Who else? So Decapitated are on there for the purists, you could say. That the way you've described that, Dave, you think that's a bit of a compromise and say, look, I know we've got these bands on, but hey,
they've kind of
Decapitated.
Well, I actually think probably Decapitated were booked and were probably quite high up on the bill anyway. But then they realised they needed some big names. Still needed the big names to fill it out. And what I thought was interesting is if you look at the big names that are headlining, they're the big names that wouldn't, if they were put on a download bill, they wouldn't be headlining at download. They are mid-tier. Because even things like Megadeth would never go on a download and be able to headline it. Because there'll always be an Alice in Chains, there'll always be a Metallica or a Slipknot that will always put them down, so they get knocked down a bill. So for them to get the final closing headline shot, the best chance they've got is to go down to the next grade of festival, which is the Bloodstock. Because Bloodstock obviously want to be the download, but they've got and they are closing that gap on the download of the commerciality of what is the big download, and they are closing the gap on getting that kind of feel. And I think this is a step that they're trying to move to become the next, or to take some traction away from download.
Do you think they definitely would need? It'd be a scoop for them if they could get Korn, then, wouldn't it? If Bloodstock were to get Korn, that would almost feel like they've stolen that band from download.
But would that mean that you've lost the Bloodstock that people know and love, because it's then become this commercial element? It's not then the underground element of the you've got the bands that you don't get to see at download were meant to be at Bloodstock, and when you start then putting them on at download and at Bloodstock, you've lost that thing. And that's what looking at that bill, it's great they've got these big names on there, but I remember at the start of 2022 when at Metal to the Masses, when the Bloodstock poster went up on the back screen, and just looking at all these names going, fuck, I haven't seen these guys in ages. This is really cool. This looks really, oh look, Testament.
Yeah,
and then but you were looking at it going, well, these are the bands that you wouldn't have seen at download. And now I'm looking at it going, this just looks like a download poster now.
Yeah, do you think, so I guess your criticism is that, I don't know if it is criticism, but Bloodstock is basically just become a bit like Kerrang magazine, hasn't it? It's like, what are they covering? We need to get some of these bands. So I think when you start to see a lot more of the mainstream metalcore bands on that bill, that will probably see some people reacting quite negatively to that.
I think it's a lack of, they're losing their identity. with this bill. For what Bloodstock was, for me, from what I've known of Bloodstock, there was always a couple of big bands. This just feels like they're trying to put too many name bands on there and not giving. There's plenty of more extreme bands that are well known, like the Carcasses and all those sort of bands that could easily be on this bill that would generate people's interest. Bands that are not going to get asked to play on download, that would easily fill out a bill and be a packed out festival. But it feels like an easy option to go in and get the Megadeths and the In Flames, and they would have had to pay decent money for these bands in there. I get In Flames. I'm not so keen on getting why Megadeth are there. It's classic thrash, but you put someone like In Flames and Megadeth against each other as far as their heaviosity, and to me, In Flames just knocks it out for their heaviness. If you want speed, you want technical ability and thrash, then yeah, Megadeth have got it, but
That's what I want.
I'd kind of want to go and see that at download with a load of other bands like that kind of thing.
Yeah, Andy, do you not think then with Bloodstock, they probably need bands like Triptychon on there, don't they? I think that would have been a good addition.
Yeah, I think they summarised it. You know, there's a certain level of bands in certain genres which would be and have historically been on the Bloodstock lineup. And yeah, it's a sort of, you know, it's a head scratching sort of an announcement, really. But they obviously want to maybe grow the festival. I mean, people I do know who have gone and said how it has grown over the years. But it's still intimate enough to still be enclosed, and you know, you can still get out easily and find your campsite and find your friends and all this kind of thing, and not have too many sort of clashes. But it just seems to be maybe getting a little bit too big for itself.
Yeah, one last thought then. So this is dominated by thrash bands, but are there any thrash bands that were formed 10 years ago that are on this bill? Or even 20?
Yeah.
Where is Havoc? Where is Warbringer? Where are all these modern thrash bands? And a lot of them are far better than the old greats in terms of the quality material. They don't seem to get a look in here. Silosis, great English thrash band. Yep. Did they even get mentioned as a thrash metal band? You know, Municipal Waste Day, but only because they're a party band, aren't they? So
yeah. There is more space on the bill though. I mean, they could throw a few more bands in there and kind of get a few more that people are interested in, but I think there's a sour taste in some people's mouths at the moment with this, because it's not what people were expecting from it. They were expecting it to be it's just too commercial, I think, this lineup. And I think that's what people are kind of looking at this going, even though it's Bloodstock themselves that are making that decision, it's almost like people are going, you're taking our festival away from us. How dare you? This is ours.
I think the two definitions of sellout are different here, aren't they? Sellout to the organizer of Bloodstock is great, we've sold all our tickets. Sellout to the purists is, why are you not giving us the bands that we would expect? Why are you giving us the bands that adorn the front cover of Metal Hammer and Kerrang?
Well, it's interesting. It's an interesting debate, and I'd love to know if anyone's watching this video to let us know in the comments down below what you thought about the Bloodstock announcement, and I'm sure we will cover any further updates on a future episode. But for now, let's go and check out a live performance from today's vocal band.
Good evening. Here we are at Club 85 Hitchin with tonight's headliners, Clare and Rob from Edenfall. Welcome. How are you?
Really good.
Yeah?
Yeah,
That's
good.
looking forward to tonight's build.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a long journey.
And where are you based? Just to tell the viewers.
Well, we've come all the way down from the North Yorkshire coast today.
Oh, right.
We're all over the place, like it's predominantly southwest Gloucestershire. My drummer lives in Weston-super-Mare.
Okay.
Bass player lives in Oxfordshire. You live in you're just a nomad, aren't you? You're from Yorkshire, but I'm in Worcestershire now. Predominantly Gloucestershire based though, so southwest pretty much.
For those people who don't know your material and haven't seen you live or heard you, what would they expect if they put on one of your albums or come
I mean, to be fair, we've changed quite a bit over the years. So we formed in 2009 as very much like your typical sort of melancholy doom sort of stuff.
Obsessed with anything gothic as well.
Yes, I guess you could say gothic doom, inspired by the likes of Draconian. Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, I hear those elements.
Paradise Lost,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. Then a few years down the line, we did our second album. It was taking things a bit more in the metal direction, sort of a bit more growl vocals, a bit heavier, more double kicks, so on. The new one that's coming out, hopefully this year, possibly early next year, it's been a while since the last album. It's taken more of a, almost, I guess we could call it folk horror direction. So it's still...
Lyrically, it's about a lot of sort of English folklore and sort of dark age mysticism with a bit of folk and black metal thrown in.
Yeah. Talking to the new album, you've recently released a single and a video for that, called Wild Hunt.
Yep.
Filmed in a very opulent church. How was that?
Just down the
experience?
road from me.
Yeah.
It's, just next to my local pub growing up. That was
Yeah, we literally
very good.
searched everywhere and it was like, oh, there's a place just down the road and rates are good and looks decent.
My name, Brian. We're huge fans of the band. Clearly, you are as well. So we're trying to interview Aaron. Well, you are, aren't you?
He's on our album actually.
Oh, is he?
Interesting fact. Yeah, he's guest vocaling on the last track.
Excellent. Is he growling, singing? I don't
Spoken passage. It's
Yeah.
classic spoken passage. Yeah.
But yeah, we're actually playing that track tonight, but at the moment it's just like a log.
Because I can tell by your accent you're East Riding of Yorkshire, am I right? Obviously, my down Rider West Yorkshire.
No, I'm West Yorkshire.
Where are you?
Wakefield.
Oh, bloody hell, you are West Yorkshire. Do you know, I thought that was more of a Hull type accent that you had. East
Yeah.
Riding, okay, yeah.
Well, I've might have changed a bit because I've lived sort of down south for about 12 years now. Yeah.
There are certain cadences the way you pronounce things that I do as well because I'm originally from East Lancashire.
Oh, cool.
So, you know, that's quite similar to West Yorkshire, isn't it? It's just the way we pronounce vowels is different.
Yeah.
You say two and we say two for the number. That's about it. But and it's interesting that you said you started off as more of a sorrowful, melancholy doom band, you know, Paradise Lost, one of my favourite bands. And then you've gone a bit heavier and more extreme direction.
Yeah, you could say
bands
that,
often do the opposite.
Yeah.
Start off
yeah.
extreme and then, for whatever reason,
I've
they'll
noticed
explore
that,
different
yeah.
textures and
Yeah,
you've done the
definitely.
opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah, just I think because I've gotten older, you know, more influences coming in and stuff.
Mm.
So going back to that first album, which I really do like, there's a couple of passages in some of the songs which would almost be funeral doom, would you say?
Yeah. It's good, yeah.
Do you have a keyboard player? I assume you will do, right?
So we used to, the first few gigs, we had a live keyboard player.
So there's lots of
Yeah, so that's...
driven songs on the keyboards and stuff.
Yeah, like whoever writes songs is probably me, Claire, Sean. We just do the keyboards ourselves when we write the songs, and it's all on backing track now.
Yeah.
It was just a bit more consistent, and when you're up at a gig, it's like instead of right, can 6 people make it? It's just a bit more likely that 5 people are available.
Is that, do you know when you say backing track, will that just be through a laptop?
Oh, it's the iPod.
Oh yeah.
We used to do it through a laptop, but then the drummer lost his stick and it hit the laptop and broke the screen. So we thought, yeah, okay, lesson learned, we'll do it with an iPod now. Trigger the backings.
See, yeah, I like that. Do you know when I first understood how to use a backing track was Depeche Mode. Watching the, I think it's their 1989 documentary, 101, where it follows them around America. I was like, that's where the drums are coming from. And they programmed the bass with it, and then they would play the synths and guitar parts over the tops. It was like, for some reason, it just wasn't obvious to me how bands were doing it. So yeah, I can.
Yeah, we see the whole split stereo thing. So half, you mix it in Logic. Whatever the drummer needs to hear gets panned hard left. Whatever the audience hears gets panned hard right.
Yeah.
So our drummer has like a click and stuff to help keep him in time.
Definitely. Yeah. Why wouldn't you? You need to, don't you?
Yeah, it'd be messy.
I mean, like getting back to your Gothic origins. So what we were just talking about, let me present you with another consideration, The Cure. Disintegration, one of the best albums of all time, in my opinion. Can you imagine if that album had had a live orchestra, rather than the keyboards playing those strings? I just like that they had enough money, they could have brought them in. It's like, no, we'll do all this on keyboards. And we don't want it to sound like the London Philharmonic Orchestra.
Yeah, there's pros and cons to both.
Yeah, I think different than the next album, because I think as time's gone on, we've kind of upgraded like the equipment and stuff that we're using. It would be nice to get some organic instruments on the next one. Like I'd love to get the cello on it, and on the current album, because I play the harp as well, so harp on that, but it'd be nice to get.
Am I right thinking have you brought a harp with you tonight?
No.
One day.
Yeah.
One day.
And maybe you could even get Aaron to play a show with you, obviously on the album.
Yeah, that we have. Yeah, that has been talked about, as well as appearance in the music video for that song we're talking about doing, which is a 15-minute song. It's going to be turned into a mini folk.
Only 15 minutes?
Yes, only 15 minutes. That's probably average for us.
Not long enough.
But we're talking about doing a music video. It's basically going to be a short folk horror film for that song. So.
It's a bit like the what was that My Day Ride one track? Yes.
Yeah.
I think that was 27 minutes, isn't it?
You could say it's sorry.
So plans for 2023, I guess, hope to get this album out and tour and promote that?
Absolutely, yeah, you got it. Yeah, pretty much. We're already demoing ideas for the next one as well. We left it way too long between album 2 and 3. I didn't want to know how long it was, but yeah, we're pretty much going to have the next one out within a year or two after that, so get back on track.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time. Have a great show tonight. Pleasure to meet you.
You too.
All the best.
Stupid.
Thank you.
Yeah.